Look, I know I'm usually just a Nintendo boy around these parts, but if you look at the best games that were released last year, Nintendo had one game. And you know what? It was a damn good game for sure, but in comparison to, it feels just a little lackluster, you know? And again, I like Animal Crossing. I still play it occasionally, but in comparison to what else released last year, it's probably not even in my top 4 games list of that year, if I'm being honest. With all that being said, what was my favorite game of 2020? Well, it's this great little game called So why is it that 2 of the best games of 2020 have you fighting demons and monsters in the underworld to get to the end? Well, hello Fino!
Mine. I caught a knucklehead. Bone Hydra, if you understand me, menacingly hiss.
You actually don't know anything about the game when you first drop in. The game essentially gives you a loose thread of the larger story at hand and slowly develops it over time with bits of dialogue between the characters when you stumble across them. The moment you start playing, this is literally the first thing you hear Zagreus say.
Goodbye, father.
Just that one line alone gives you so much information about the character with so little actually being directly told to you. It's genius. For the majority of AAA games in 2020, they all tend to have one larger theme. Ghost of Tsushima is a story about claiming your land back from the clutches of evil. Last of Us 2 is, well, about a lot of things really, but most importantly, I would say it's about loss and grief and overcoming personal demons and the process of accepting loss and moving on. Hades is a story about a dysfunctional family, and like any dysfunctional family, the more you discover about this family, the more cracks begin to show. Family members being petty to each other, being selfish and doing things for their own benefit, and occasionally throwing unnecessary shade at each other for no reason.
Why, here I am, young man, in such strange circumstances, I might add. Luckily, the boatman K.R.I.T is much easier to get a hold of than your father.
Zagreus' motives are probably the simplest on the surface when you start out, but what's great about the narrative progression of this game is that we discover what's really going on at the same time as Zagreus does. We see his real-time reactions to what's happening around him, so as his motives progress throughout the story, so does our motives as the player. We get to see his moments of weakness and vulnerability, which helps the game in building a relatable protagonist whose struggles are unfortunately way too common in today's society. There's very few things that are more relatable than feeling trapped in your own home by the people who raised you and just wanting nothing more than the feeling of being in control and taking control of your own life. The game progression is overall just a stroke of genius by the developers. It's really a unique way of intertwining the gameplay and the story together. When you first start playing the game, it's essentially impossible to beat. You're going to be seeing a lot of this. Fuck. God damn it. Ah, come on, I was so close, dude. Come on. You know, what really is life other than pain and suffering, you know what I mean? The game just continues to build more and more momentum. As the story develops, so do the characters and the tension between them. Each time you encounter Hades or any of the other bosses, the dialogue between them becomes more hostile. Well, except for Zagreus. He's never really hostile towards anyone and is only doing what he believes is necessary for happiness, and isn't allowing anyone to get in his way. Since I'm a professional Hades speedrunner, you're probably wondering what the best weapons are. Well, it kind of depends on what you want. You got the gloves, the bow, the spear, the gun, the shield, and a variety of weapons at your arsenal. So let's say, for example, you're a spear user like me and don't want to deal with shield enemies anymore. What you do in this situation is you pick the gun. Alright, but let's say you like the gloves, but you don't have enough range. So in this situation, what you should do is go ahead and pick the gun. What I'm saying is, you should probably just pick the gun. The player feels compelled to continue playing to see where the story goes because we want to see Zagreus reach his goal, and as the player becomes more powerful, so does the story.
Oh, of course.
And it all builds up to this one moment. After so much blood, sweat, and tears, the story has reached its climax. This is where it all ends. And then the music begins to kick up. This is easily one of the greatest boss fights I've ever had the pleasure of beating. So much intensity and focus is required to beat Hades, and when I did, let me tell you, I probably took the biggest sigh of relief I've ever taken in my life, and in defeat, Hades finally shows some genuine heartfelt sentiments.
Wait, just... If you find her... If you somehow find her... Tell her something for me. Tell her Cerberus is doing very well.
You can tell by the tone of his voice that there's a sense of regret there. You can tell that he just didn't want things to be this way, and he was just doing what he believed was necessary as a father. But the battle is finally over, and you enter the Earth for the first time as the soundtrack sweeps you away into the landscape that feels so serene and peaceful. A beautiful contrast to the literal hell you just went through. And finally, the biggest question is answered. You find your mom, who doesn't even recognize you at first, but Zagreus finally meets his mother for the first time. But unfortunately, one of the only things that is certain in life is death. And in a cruel twist of fate, you are sent back to the underworld, right where you started, with so many questions left unanswered that you have to do it again to see your mother, and once again you're given new purpose. And to add insult to injury, the game will mathematically curate the most infuriating dialogue possible to piss you off and make you want to try again.
You are late, boy. Have you any idea what time it is?
No. Wait, what? I vanquished you in single combat and finally found Mother, and that's all you have to say to me?
Nonsense. Don't you think I would recall such an event?
In Hades, you're going to die over and over and over again, but each time you die, you will come back stronger, more motivated to keep trying because you're emotionally invested into the story and need that closure just as much as Zagreus does. And I cannot commend Supergiant enough for crafting such a phenomenal game that will definitely go down as one of the best roguelikes of the decade, because goddamn, Hades is one hell of a...
Lord be my witness. Keep the devil lost. Keep the devil lost.